Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to First Things First. It is Friday. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. We are wrapping up the week with a great show today. Lots going on. LeBron James delivering a message to all his critics. Jason Witten is returning to the Cowboys, but we are going to start the program off with the much-anticipated, highly hyped measurements of one Kyler Murray. Big news from a not very big man. We can report, big as in tall, stature, of course. We can report that Kyler Murray measured in at just over 5'10" at the Combine. He weighed in at 207 pounds, slightly exceeding expectations. The quarterback also recorded 9.5-inch hands, bigger, by the way, than Baker Mayfield's hands. According to reports, Kyler will not throw or run this weekend at the Combine, but he will go through some team interviews. CC, I'll start with you. How much do Kyler's measurables help his draft stock?
Well, it depends on where your expectations were. I don't think the University of Oklahoma helped him out by having him listed at 5'10", because typically, Jenna, when you go to the Combine, when you go to NFL teams, it's not like basketball. Basketball, they measured players with their basketball shoes on. At the NFL Combine, NFL facilities, they measure football players, heels together, shoes off. And typically, no matter what you're listed, you go back to my days at Ohio State, Philadelphia drafted, Minnesota Vikings, everywhere I'm listed at 6'3". Actual height, a little over 6'2". And that's been the way in sports for a long, long time. You just don't see, because people understand height, weight, and they try to get it right. And if they miss on the inflated side. So it was on the board with him being listed at 5'10", that he could be 5'9". What if he was 5'8"? Now, I wasn't concerned because I stood next to him at the Super Bowl, and I knew for a fact I stood next to Baker Mayfield. I wasn't worried about his height because I've been next to the best short quarterbacks that are currently playing this game, and the height difference between them, it's not that big of a difference between him, Russell, Drew Brees, Kyler, what I saw at the Super Bowl. So, no, I didn't think. And that's why when we had the conversation about, do I think he can be effective in the NFL? I really do. But I thought this was about expectations. And when you have expectations, and if the expectations are realistic, then typically when you get more information, like yesterday, it became a bonus.
Right.
It was like he got taller.
That was, I mean, it is absolutely a case study. Malcolm Gladwell could write a whole magazine piece on this, about expectations. Yep. And listen, we both, Cris and I both have had kids that are old enough to have gone through grades. Jenna, of course, has kids, but they're young. Like, I don't know the difference between your son and daughter's academic performance, but with me, like, a grade card for my son that would make me happy would infuriate me from my daughter because of expectations, right? And so if we all thought Kyler was going to be 5'11", and he came in at 5'10", today's a bad day for him. Most of us, or at least myself, I didn't stand next to him at the Super Bowl. I thought he was going to come in around 5'9"-ish. So 5'10" is a good day for him.
But add the weight and the hand size as well.
Absolutely. Well, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the reality is 5'10" is 5'10". No matter what you thought he was going to be, 5'10" is 5'10". When he is taken, he will be the shortest quarterback ever drafted as a quarterback under this draft format. Flutie is his height. Flutie was drafted in the 11th round. There is not an 8th round anymore. So under this format, he'll be the shortest quarterback ever taken to be a quarterback. Now, guys his size have been taken to be a slot receiver. Julian Edelman got taken to go as a quarterback to be a receiver. So there have been small people drafted, but not at that spot. Now, the hand size, Jen, is key because 9.5 is perfectly fine.
Yes.
9.5 it would be in the 40th percentile for NFL starting quarterbacks, slightly below average, but it's not 8 3/4. It's not, there's not a single NFL quarterback right now with hands measuring under 9 inches. Jared Goff is the smallest in the league. And so I thought it was on the board, and we talked about this a lot. And if he did have 9-inch or smaller hands, I think there's a handful of teams, particularly cold weather teams, that just cross him off. They just say undraftable in these conditions. Now, the team with the #1 pick, Arizona, they play in a climate-controlled environment. They play in a division where you're not going to deal with a lot of bad weather, so that might not disqualify him there. But even though the expectations warped what we thought it was, at least for me, our reaction to 5'10", he would be the shortest quarterback ever taken as a quarterback under the current draft format. That has not changed.
All right, well, clearly his team undersold his measurements a little bit, or seemingly did, so that we could have discussions like this and be, impressed that he exceeded expectations with all of those. How about the news that he's not going to throw or run at the Combine? Did that surprise you at all, CC?
I'm not surprised, because meeting with him and meeting with some people that are going to handle his business, he doesn't have this figured out yet. He doesn't know what really being an NFL quarterback. And I just believe that a lot of players, they make a lot of mistakes with the type of advice and everything that they're getting. I mean, it's obvious he's a rare athlete. Being drafted in Major League Baseball in the first round, he will get drafted in the NFL in the first round. First time, those two sports, first-round picks. So it speaks to how good an athlete is, but how you're going to handle it, some of the PR around it, some of these other decisions, I just believe in this. If I got it, I'm going to show it to you. If I'm a basketball player, they got a hoop out there. You want me to shoot it? I'll shoot it. You want me to dribble it? I'll dribble it. You want me to play? You want me to throw? And all these other guys are lined up with me. Dwayne Haskins, these other quarterbacks. I always believe you do yourself better. The whole NFL is there. You're there for your first interview. So now you tell them, no, I'm going to wait till I get back to Oklahoma. Not unless there was something as far as an injury or something like that, because when you play as good as he played, throwing the football, to me, I would either be running and or throwing. I would be doing at least one of them. I wouldn't miss both of those.
I think he's doing himself a disservice, because I don't know how the interviews are going to go. That is one spot where the limited exposure we've had to him as far as interviews with media, I would say, have been underwhelming. But that doesn't mean he won't interview well with teams. But we don't know how those are going to go.
Yeah.
I know how the throwing would go. It would go great for him. He is incredibly accurate. The fact that he is draftable, the fact that he is going to be a first-round pick
is because
he is on a dime accurate. And I want to remind people of that, because as you've pointed out so many times throughout the college football season, all these potential top picks, we build up. And then starting basically on New Year's Day, it's a tear down. And I want to remind people, if I'm Kyler Murray, how I won the Heisman, how I came back from an insurmountable deficit, according to the odds, against Tua Tagovailoa to win the Heisman, to do what I did to set all these records at the University of Oklahoma. I want to remind people of that, because he's not going to get any taller. The hand size thing was a positive, and he did bulk up. I wonder how much of the bulk up was false weight to a degree.
Yes, absolutely.
If he's 15 pounds heavier than what he was at the University of Oklahoma, even if he can keep 10 of those pounds. But the interviews, I'm very curious how he does in these interviews, and that's going to matter, because that's all he's doing now at the Combine.
So just quickly, give me a reason why he wouldn't throw. If we clearly know how talented he is and how good he is, what's the message his people are giving him, why he'd be better served not
Because
throwing?
if you look at the other quarterbacks that decided that they were going to enter the draft, his was a different story. So maybe he hadn't been working on throwing the football. Maybe his timing's a little off. He's done a lot of traveling. He's been trying to work on his weight, things that he knew people, like he knew how tall he was going to be. He knew his hand size. So there were other things he could work on. So those things are understandable, but I would communicate those things. This is your first job interview. You never get a chance to make a first impression again. So not throwing, not running, only participate in the limit. That's the first impression the NFL scouts, NFL front office people are getting from Kyler.
And I don't think there's a single GM in the league that says, I'm glad he's not throwing. There might be one or two, even if it's just one or two, that's like, man, it bothers me that he won't throw. And even if that's unfair, that one or two could be the team that needs him, that's in position to draft him. All of it, even if it's illogical to some people's opinion, all of it matters. I don't think not throwing helps him.
All right, we'll talk more about this coming up. But on the other side, LeBron James issuing a challenge to his opponents. That's next on FS1, and you can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We're back right after this. Here's a quick and free way to finally stick to your New Year's resolutions. Start listening to podcasts on Spotify. With more than 150,000 podcasts, including many of the world's most popular self-improvement shows, you can learn how to balance a budget, balance your diet, and even learn how to feel balanced while meditating. All podcasts on Spotify are free, and you can download episodes for those times when you've gone off the grid, you know, to get all that newfound balance back into your life. So start the year off right and start listening to podcasts on Spotify. So last season, Atlanta United beat the Portland Timbers in the MLS Cup. The 2019 season kicks off tomorrow with 2 games here on FS1. And guess what, guys? We got merch.
Yes.
We
Sporting
got
KC.
Jerseys.
I'm going to jump in here, Jenna.
Oh.
Sporting KC was supposed to be in that game last year, Atlanta and Portland. Got knocked out in the semifinals. Could have won another championship. It's the only KC team that wins a bunch of titles is Sporting KC.
Look at it.
Best stadium in sports. Chris, you got is that the Minnesota team?
Yes.
That is. Jenna?
Red Bulls, New York, right
New York
here.
Red Bulls. I'm excited for them season. Sporting KC, if you go to Kansas City, America, make sure you check out Sporting Park.
More
out
KC
in Kansas City, Kansas.
Hey,
Guys.
During the Chiefs season.
Well, I'm just letting you know.
You're excited. You're excited.
Sporting KC is the best team we got in my hometown, and it makes me excited.
We'll get to LeBron James in a second, but first, Michigan, Nebraska, Jordan Poole delivering the big dunk on the fast break.
See, your guy was there watching this in person, Coach Harbaugh.
Yeah, he was trying to recruit some athletes off the basketball team. Maybe might be able to win something. That's a basketball school, man.
NBA, Derrick Jones Jr. cleans up the Dwayne Wade miss with a putback slam.
Oh, this was nice. He's left-handed. It came off on his shooting hand, and he finishes.
Between he and Bam Adebayo, the Heat are good for a couple big-time dunk highlights a game.
Bad loss by the Heat. Up by 20.
Yep.
Here you go. More from this game. Rockets Heat. D-Wade using multiple fakes on 2 Houston guys to get free for the layup.
A great tweet sent during this game. How old are you? I'm this move old. Like,
That's great.
That is vintage. The only thing we need is a mic and shot from the baseline. Look at D-Wade.
D-Wade keeps it up.
D-Wade.
The Heat going to ask him to come back and play another year.
Yeah, Dirk, and by the way, Dirk, it's his swan song, but he said, I never told everyone I was retiring.
Magic Warriors, DJ Augustine finds a flying Jonathan Isaac for the one-handed flush.
I like Isaac as a player. Big-time talent. Now he needs to gain some weight.
Yeah.
Kid from Florida State. I believe he's going to have a really good pro career.
He and Mo Bamba are the 2 young prospects on the Magic where you're like, they both need about 20 pounds, and we'll see.
On to
Speaking of
LeBron
20
James
pounds.
now. Yeah.
Holla, holla.
In year 16, there isn't much more left for the King to prove, but don't tell that to his critics who have honed in on LeBron's defense. Lest we forget, LeBron is a 5-time all-defensive first-teamer and a 20-time all-everything soundbite giver. He had this to say to his critics. I mean, every team has the right if they want to single me out defensively. Come on. Hey, listen, come on with it. Every team has the right to be like, oh, Bron's over there. Hey, just come on with it. I feel like he says it better than I do. We'll see what happens. Nick, what was your reaction to what LeBron had to say?
It was very, not surprisingly, strategic what he said. Because his on-the-ball, one-on-one defense has been very good. It's always been very good. Even when he's right now what I would consider out of shape by his standards, because he's never going to be in the wrong position on the ball. He knows exactly the spot you're trying to get to. He knows exactly the way to shade you. He's going to be very good on the ball defensively. That Memphis game, where Chris had a whole highlight reel of his bad defensive plays.
Shadow dad.
It was all help stuff and rotation stuff. In that Memphis game, guys went 1 of 10 from the field when he was guarding them. 1 of 10. Now, so that's true. That does not excuse the lack of rotations, the lack of help side defense, because very little defense is one-on-one, mano-a-mano, unless you're playing the Rockets, and it's just you're going to be ISO'd on Harden or ISO'd on Chris Paul. It's about the team rotations, the team defense, helping the helper, that type of stuff. And he's been the worst he's ever been at that since he came back from his injury. So I agree with what he's saying, but what he's saying doesn't tell the entire story.
Well, LeBron, the last several years, has not been the type of defender that you mentioned with the accolades that you did. First team all defensive in the NBA 5 times. So it's impossible, especially with all the notoriety around LeBron James, and as much as people tried to discredit his career, for him to be 5 times, he was an amazing defender. Over the last several years, has his defense, has he decided that I'm going to coast at certain times? Yes. So has every other great defender that was in the legendary status of him. There's only a few of them to come to mention, one being Kobe Bryant, All right, at the end of his career, was he the same defender? Not even close. Michael Jordan, he was not the same defender, even though he was a better defender than LeBron is right now. So for me, LeBron, at this age, he can't afford to make mistakes because his reaction time in getting back to help defend is not as good. But if you challenge any pro, if you challenge him one-on-one, they will respond. Last year in the playoffs, LeBron did respond, and the Cavs responded. They were a lot better defensively. When they get Lonzo Ball back, if they had a more competent center, LeBron engaged, he will be better playing defense because that's what his job requires. And whatever his job requires, typically, that's what LeBron does.
And listen, Jordan was, people think I criticize Jordan too much. Jordan was, without question, a better on-ball defender than LeBron. But LeBron has the ability to guard all 5 positions to a higher degree just because he's bigger and stronger. But what Jordan had for his second run of championships and what Kobe had for his second run of championships, something LeBron doesn't have. Kobe had Ron Artest with him as a guy who would always guard the other team's best perimeter guy when need be. Jordan had Pippen and Rodman with him. So LeBron, with the Cavs the last few years and this year with the Lakers, even though Lonzo, I think, is a very good defender, doesn't have that type of other big body out there to maybe take on the Kevin Durant, the Paul George, the best player on the best.
This is the one thing
team.
I can tell you. Even though Rodman was on those teams, yes, Scottie Pippen, yes, my homeboy Ron Harper, yes, but Michael Jordan never backed down from guarding in big moments, and or if he needed to be on a guy, like that he wouldn't guard that.
Sure.
Guy. So they're one of the best. That's why as a championship team, they're one of the best ever because of that aspect of what they could do 1 through 4 defensively. And Michael Jordan was the leader of that. He wasn't a guy just being around.
I know we're singling LeBron out, but realistically, how much of a detriment is he to this team because of what he's done defensively?
Well, listen,
or are we just talking about this because it's LeBron?
He's been, other than Lonzo, the metrics say he's been their best defender on the Lakers. So, like, over the course of the season. Now, that is skewed to a degree because he was playing such better defense before Christmas than he has since Christmas. And so we have to see how healthy he continues to be, how his stamina comes back. But he has not been, and there was real, go ahead, C.
We need to go to LeBron's injury because I don't think that, we're doing LeBron the type of service that needs to be done. When you have a growing injury, you're a basketball player, all right? When you return from that, it's the most significant injury he's ever had in his life. But from a basketball standpoint, it's easier to play offensive basketball with the strain growing because you're not in a squat position predominantly. You can function offensively more in an upright position. You don't have to do the things. Defensively, if your growing is bothering you, if you're not 100%, the defensive position, the squatting position is uncomfortable when you injure your growing. So it's not fair for us to try to say, because we know he's not 100%. We know he's not the same weight. So what part of his game would suffer the most? That's on the defensive end because you can't get down in that squatted position and play technically the type of defense that you need to play against these great athletes that we have in the NBA.
And defense is about reaction. So, like, the quick movement in that regard. On offense, it can be about quick movement, but you know which way you're going. And so that's another spot where that specific injury is going to impact you more on one side of the ball. But the other point that I was going to make, and this is something that LeBron has done to himself, the play that he got singled out for the most on was when the Lakers against the Grizzlies had cut it to 4. Bruno Caboclo is wide open from 3. LeBron's under the basket. He hits the 3. LeBron does what he always does when a guy hits an open 3. Puts his hands up and looks around. Palms to the sky and looks around. Now, Luke Walton was asked about that specific play after the game. And he said LeBron was doing exactly what he had done the last 3 possessions, which is what we wanted him to do, which is check the center, which was, I think at the time, it was either Valanciunas or Joakim Noah, whomever it was. But LeBron, to his detriment, always does the palms to the sky look around, even when it's his fault. So when you see him do it in a spot where it might not be his fault, you people just say, oh, that was LeBron's guy. And so some of that stuff, we don't know what the rotation was supposed to be. But over the course of a game, we can see he is not consistently flying around the court defensively, which is something he has done to a lesser degree over the last few years, but since he came back from the injury, it's the least active we've seen him on the defensive end. I still don't think people are going to try to isolate him in a pick and roll of all the available Lakers like what he's talking about. Yeah, come at me.
Right.
I don't think that'll be anybody's game plan moving forward.
All right, we got to take a break, talk some football on the other side. Is it Super Bowl or bust for Jason Witten and the Cowboys? Didn't think we'd be saying that this quickly.
I think you mean Jason Garrett, right?
That too. That's next on First Things First. Welterweight world champion Showtime Shawn Porter defends his belt for the first time live in primetime March 9th, only on Fox.
That's going to be a good fight now.
Oh, yeah. That other guy's going to get hit in his face a bunch.
They'll both probably get hit in the face a bunch, to be fair.
So rapper Kodak Black, good friends with Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson, big NFL fan. He was asked to give players some nicknames. So take a listen to this.
Okay, Kodak.
Cheesy Pete, Hillfield, Dookie Cheese, Smaller Fry, Gator, Brad, B-Rad, Carrot Top, ZZ, Julio Fulio, Raymond Noodle, Dre Money, JJ Watt. That's already he could go by his real name, his rap name, Kodak.
Let's go by his real name.
So does Kodak Black.
Yeah.
That's his real name.
Is it? Oh. What's he?
I mean, it doesn't get easier than that one.
What was the
That was a natural, that was a very, very good reaction.
Fans, I'm learning how to not be as gullible, and I failed miserably, literally a half hour.
What should we name the beautiful baby boy? Kodak Black Jackson? Come on, man.
What did they do? Jalen Ramsey? That was my favorite one. JJ Noodle? J Noodle?
Just ramen noodle.
Oh, ramen noodle.
Because Ramsey, ramen.
Oh, that's good.
You understandably got confused because they did call JJ Watt.
Jenna.
JJ Watt.
He says a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's saying either.
Okay, good.
All right, don't feel like you're offended and everything. This guy over here. Jeez.
Stop tricking me. Time now for your AT&T wake-up call. Bryce Harper has agreed to a whopping 13-year, $330 million deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. The 26-year-old got a no-trade clause, but no opt-outs, which means he's going to be in Philly for the long haul. Buy, don't rent. Nick, is Harper worth all this money?
Listen, Harper at his best is one of the two best players in baseball. We saw that from his unanimous MVP season 4 years ago. There's a great ballpark for him, second best ballpark in baseball for left-handed hitters. The question for the Phillies is, they were a terrible defensive team last year. He's not going to help with on that end. See, I was shocked they gave him a no-trade. 13 years with a no-trade means even if we fall apart, we are tied to Bryce Harper. He also didn't get an opt-out on the end. I was really surprised they gave him the no-trade clause.
I haven't seen any of these long-term contracts that were worth the money. I mean, we have been seeing them for the last 15 years or so. None of them. That's a long time.
13's
no trade. Man, Philadelphia, I know the people of Philadelphia. They love you, but they fall out of love with you. So I just look for some type of divorce. It's going to be an ugly separation.
All right, let's move on to the NBA now. The Warriors, without Kevin Durant, who was resting last night, lost to the Magic 103-96. Steph Curry dropping 33 points in Durant's absence. But Golden State blew a 13-point third-quarter lead. Nick, how bad of a loss was this for Golden State?
Listen, this is a bad loss because even without KD, you're supposed to be able to go to Orlando and get that win. I know it's on a back-to-back after just playing Miami, but that's not real travel, Miami to Orlando. And now the loss was tempered by the fact that late night, Denver also lost. So for a moment, Denver was in first in the West, then they lost to the Jazz. But the way they lost and the way the Magic see, if you watch this, were hunting DeMarcus Cousins in the fourth quarter. That's a concern point for the Warriors.
It's going around the league as far as how to attack them. This has been, in the last 5 years, Nick, you told me this, the least impressive Warriors. They're the most talented, but the least impressive during the regular season. We have seen them hit a switch, and this year, they haven't gone to be able to hit that switch yet. So I believe it's more important because of the distance between Milwaukee.
Sure. Well, Milwaukee's
and whoever's going to come out of the West.
Yep, Milwaukee is going to have home court in every series they play. That's almost locked up at this point.
All right, let's move on to the NFL. Kirk Cousins signed a 3-year, $84 million guaranteed contract with the Vikings last March, but the quarterback went just 8-7-1 in his first year. and miss the playoffs. Head coach Mike Zimmer believes Cousins will be better in year 2. See, how much pressure is on Kirk Cousins this season now?
Well, there's a lot of pressure on Kirk Cousins, but I just believe that the season will start out. Last year, the expectations, we talked about Kyler Murray. Man, were the expectations real? But they had set the stage that, man, he got that news, and we were like, oh, that's great. Last year with Kirk Cousins, how could they have a successful season without going to the Super Bowl? It's impossible. He's got all the money guaranteed, but you can't start off worse. Offensive line coach dies in training camp. Offensive line unit, the least talented unit that they have on their team. Offensive coordinator fired because they won't run the ball. I believe Kirk Cousins will be more successful in year number 2. New offensive line coach Rick Dennison, they will run the ball, so it should be a lot easier this year.
Listen, I think that the team will be better than 8-7-1. I think his overall season numbers were basically a typical Kirk Cousins season last year. The critical point for him this year is, when do those numbers come? Throughout his career, his inability to beat the best, do well against the best defenses, the best teams,
right,
particularly in prime time, standalone games. That's been the knock on him. That continued last year. So the handful of times the Vikings are on Sunday night or Thursday night or Monday Night Football against good teams, how well does he do?
Good point.
In addition to getting back to the postseason, of course. That's what will determine a successful season.
All right, let's move on to the reality show that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Antonio Brown is looking for a trade. That we know. He is beyond frustrated with the Steelers and their brass. That we also know. Check out what he had to say about GM Kevin Colbert's recent comments that Ben Roethlisberger has 52 kids under him. He said, of course, he tried to clarify because, he stated the truth and he's going to backpedal on his words. But what is a grown man calling another grown man a kid? 52 kids. Like, you don't have no respect for these guys. You know what I'm saying? It's all about respect. Things are not getting better. They're not changing. He just stated it. There's 52 kids, and it's this guy, Roethlisberger. Bro, it's one team, so that's what it is. Just understanding truths. See, what was your reaction to what Antonio Brown had to say?
Well, Kevin Colbert made a tremendous mistake in his wording when he's trying to justify what's going on inside the locker room. And it's a real thing. Men, it's about being macho. And there's no man out there that wants to be called a boy or a kid. And people think, well, why is that such a big deal? Well, how can Ben Roethlisberger be the only grown man that they have in that locker room? Because I know Ben Roethlisberger. I know his track record. And he's got a bunch of stuff on his rap sheet that are childish-like stuff. All right? Now, Kevin Colbert, I've been covering this league long enough to know all those things. Now, maybe in the Pittsburgh, maybe in the last several years and everything, because nothing like that has happened, they're just going to act like we forgot. I have not forgotten. There have been many a times in his career. Let's go back to riding a motorcycle without a helmet. And then telling people, are you going to continue riding the motorcycle? Yeah. Afterwards, after he survived death, after a crash, and a number of other things that it doesn't make sense for me to just hash out. But you can't have the general manager of the team make an excuse for the quarterback, the same thing that the players have been saying for years, that there's a different standard for him. How they treat him compared to how they treat us is totally different. It played out. He opened up his mouth and let everyone else know what's been going on there with in Pittsburgh as far as the treatment of the quarterback compared to the treatment of the other players.
It is as big of a double standard as you can have in sports. And if not for AB's just indefensible no show, no call, I would almost assuredly be on Antonio Brown's side in this debate, because so much of the criticism of Ben Roethlisberger from Antonio Brown is fair, is legitimate, is how I think I would feel if I were in that position. And the fact that the organization has made it so clear Big Ben can do no wrong. He's the leader. He's got to be the leader because we got 52 kids. Forget that one of our offensive linemen fought in a war. Forget that you've got Cam Hayward, one of the best leaders in sports, grown man. Joe Hayden, who's a Pro Bowl grown man in his own right. This isn't a situation where you've got a veteran NBA player who literally is on a team with nothing but 19 and 20-year-olds. Got a 35 in a situation that situation doesn't exist currently in the NBA, but we've seen it before. There are other guys on the team of Ben Roethlisberger's generation, if you will. And Ben has not, forget the things he did that you're talking about off the field early in his career. How about in the last 36 months that have to do with on the field or talking about on the field, throwing Todd Haley under the bus, throwing his head coach under the bus, throwing his receivers under the bus, doing his group therapy session of those radio interviews. That's not grown-up stuff.
National anthem. The whole team decides to stay into the locker room, but they do have a veteran who they granted the right to be able to go out and honor the flag based on his whole life experience. Ben all of a sudden saw...
Piggybacks on that?
Oh, the optics of that are going to be great for him. I wanted to go out too, but they wouldn't let me. If you're working with 52 kids, you're making all decisions. So, I just know what's going on in Pittsburgh, and it's going on there for a long time. There's a reason why Hines Ward, at the end of his career, he wasn't happy. Santonio Holmes, he wasn't happy. There's a reason why Ben Roethlisberger have left. The other guys that he's played with feeling a little bit, wow, is he really the best leader that we should have for this organization?
If you both agree then that this legitimizes, at least to a small regard, what Antonio Brown had to say and criticize, how it criticized his team, do you think this helps his stock at all? Now that he's sort of being shipped and shopped to the rest of the league?
I think people understand that Antonio Brown's beef with Ben Roethlisberger was not one-sided. I think people understand.
But does this help them understand even more?
Yes, I think people understand that Antonio Brown's complaints were not just total false. Like, he's not a boy who cried wolf. But I don't think anybody thinks he handled it the right way. I don't think he handled it the right way. But the one other part of this before we move on, is the other thing that those GM's comments to me represented was a total undercutting of Mike Tomlin. Because, so Ben Roethlisberger's your adult in the room. He's your only adult in the room. It's Ben Roethlisberger and 52 kids. I didn't hear the GM say, we've got 2 adults, Ben and our head coach that got to deal with it. I thought Kevin Colbert really made a mistake saying those things last week, and I think you're going to continue to see little bits and pieces of the fallout from it over the next few weeks.
All right, let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys. They made a little news yesterday. A year after Jason Witten left for the broadcast booth, the Monday Night Football announcer is now leaving the broadcast booth for the Cowboys. Coming out of retirement for his 16th season with the team, the tight end will sign a 1-year deal worth $3.5 million. Head coach Jason Garrett said, there is no question in my mind he can still play at a high level. Chris Carter, how much can Witten help the Dallas Cowboys realistically?
If Jason Witten was signing today with the New England Patriots, and I say, man, New England Patriots are the best at finding what a player can do, would we be excited about him signing? Nick and I wouldn't. We'd been like, no.
And the Patriots are a team that we grant a ton of extra credit to, understandably.
So, no, Dallas is going through wholesale changes from a coaching staff. Do you think Kellen Moore is offense coordinator, you think he got better today? No, he didn't get better because he just got forced today. They get ready to force feed Jason Witten. They're going to target him
8 to 10 times.
He's going to get 80 to 90 targets easy. So what about those other tight ends that we told them this offseason, you're going to have we're going to increase your role in the offense? You think he helped John Kitna as a quarterback coach? Like, how's Dak? Because now Dak has a safety blanket. Dak don't need no safety blanket. We need Dak to throw the ball down the field. And then Jason Witten, unless he got someone put their legs on his body, because the last several years he cannot run. And there's no way you are leaving the booth thinking you're getting ready to, I'm getting ready to be able to run faster. I mean, for the last several years, we've had Shannon Sharp on the show after us challenging Jason Witten to a race.
Shannon's been out of football for a decade.
Shannon can't walk. He ain't got no cartilage in his knees. When you're challenging NFL players to races, it lets you know you cannot run. Football is not a game if you can't avoid people. Jason Witten, in a number of years, has never been an elite end-of-the-line blocker.
Well, expand on that for a moment, because this is something that when a guy is slow and not a dynamic pass catcher, I think casual football fans, and I would include myself in this regard, I just assumed he must be a great blocker, and I'm not seeing it. But you looked up the PFF numbers, or Dusty looked him up, PFF numbers. He was, his last year, 28th. In run blocking?
28th.
Amongst tight ends.
Yeah. When you are 28th in run blocking amongst tight ends and you're not a speed tight end, what are you providing?
What do you
Now, do they feel like his leadership is going to be that much? Let me tell you about young guys, what they respect. Can you play ball?
Right.
All right, don't be telling me about, oh, man, 15 years ago, 2010, man, I was all pro. Well, shoot, if you go back to 2000, I was still making the Pro Bowl.
Right.
Okay, if you're going to keep going back in the time machine, look, I'm a fan of Jason Witten. Jason Witten was pulled at the strings. He almost came out of retirement last season. And the reason why, not because of football, not because he's great at football, because he got into another profession that he was not good at. It's hard to be elite in something and then go into something else and get a lot of criticism, especially when you are in a public job. When you're used to people clapping for you and now you got people making memes and stuff about you, that's a tough transition. And that's what really happened here. If we think the Dallas Cowboys got better yesterday, we're fooling ourselves.
To me, this was a lifeline from the Cowboys to an all-time Cowboy great, which is kind. And if it were baseball and there were no salary cap, I would have no problem with. But this is a roster spot. This is $3.5 million.
Yeah, this is not the NBA.
Right.
This is not Dwayne Wade. This is not Dirk. In the NFL, you can't do this with your frontline player because the roster spots and who's going to dress, it becomes very, very valuable. He does not play any special teams. So tell me what boost is he going to get?
And so just people say, well, the Cowboys tight end position, though, you guys have been saying all offseason they need to upgrade it. During the year, we were critical of it. Blake Jarwin and Jeff Swaim last year, okay? They combined because Swaim got hurt early in the year. They combined for 53 catches, 550 yards, and 4 touchdowns, and 10 yards per catch. That's not great production. 53, 550, 4 were their combined production. Jason Witten's last year, 63, 560, 5. So what we thought was bad production, that's what Jason Witten did a year ago. And the idea that he's going to be better a year out of football, he's not going to be faster. He's not going to be stronger. Jason Witten was not one of his last year with the Cowboys. Whatever you think of it, the entirety of his career, set that aside. His last year with the Cowboys, he was not one of the 20 most productive tight ends in the league. And the leadership perspective, for good or for bad, it is time for this to be Dak and Zeke's team.
Absolutely.
That's the other part of this. Like, if the year after you played with the Dolphins, if all of a sudden you went back to Minnesota, I'm sure there would be young guys on the team like, hey, man.
Forget about going back when I left there. Man, that was Dante Culpepper and Randy Moss's team.
Correct.
And Dennis Green, you know something? He was man enough to look me in the face and tell me. And you know something what I told him? No problem,
See you later.
I'm up out of here.
Right.
The Cowboys have this loyalty to former players, to the John Kittens, the Kellen Moores, the Jason Wittens. Is that any sort of recipe for success when you are so loyal to guys that you've seen in-house as opposed to who the best player or the best person is for that position?
Dallas Cowboys about winning Super Bowls. And if those players can help them to win some Super Bowls, then I would say that. Dallas has had some great players. They've had some guys that are very, very knowledgeable about football. Those aren't the ones that they hired. Now, this right here is a charity case. They got $3.5 million to be able to throw around. That's what they gave to Jason Witten. Because Bill Belichick does this thing called pro football. Y'all let me know the last guy he threw out a charity case to.
And $3.5 million is not nothing.
And I know he loves Teddy Bruschi. I know he loves all those former players. My man, Wilfork, man, loves them to death. Man, they don't give out jobs like that because it's precious. And when you get in these critical games, the Dallas Cowboys won a playoff game. They should be building on that. They won a playoff game without Jason Witten. All right?
It should just be noted, lastly, in the last 5 years, the fewest yards per after the catch of any player, wide receiver or tight end, was Jason Witten his last year with the Cowboys. In the last 5 years, the fewest yards total on at least 60 catches, the fourth fewest, I should say, was Jason Witten's last year with the Cowboys. His last year with the Cowboys was one of the least productive, high-volume seasons we've seen from a pass catcher in a decade. Now, he's a year in the broadcast booth, back with Dallas, and he's going to be better. It's totally illogical.
Only thing better is his hair, man. Dude got more hair. I don't know how that happened. I talked to Deion Urlacher and them. They not fooling with him. But,
Take a break. Coming up, did Kyler Murray measure up to the #1 pick? That's ahead on First Things First. Back here on First First things first, we are joined by not just former NBA champ, NCAA champ,
There we go.
Antoine Walker.
I like that.
It took us almost a year. We put that in there just for you. Any other requests, you just let me know, and that's how I'm going to introduce you.
The inventor of the shimmy. Can we include that, please?
That's
That'd be nice too now.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, Antoine, we've had a plethora of MVP conversations on this show, with the top spot usually going to Giannis or Harden. Last night, Harden made one of the most impressive cases for himself yet. The beard going off for 58 points, 7 boards, 10 assists in a win over Miami. For James Harden, his 6th 50-point game of the season. No one else in the league has more than one. And oh, by the way, Rockets came back from down 21 to beat Miami. Here is James Harden after the game.
I don't worry about missing shots or making shots. I worry about taking the shots that, I work on, and they're going to go in eventually, So whether I shoot 2 for 30 or 15, 16 for 30, those shots are going to get shot.
All right, Antoine, when Harden is playing like that, when the team around him is this healthy, how dangerous can the Rockets be?
I wasn't big on the Rockets, but after last night and really kind of evaluating their team, they're very dangerous. And they're dangerous because they added some key pieces, if they're healthy, going into the playoffs. I love the pickup of Iman Shumpert. If he gets healthy, he gives some defensive presence out there. Kenneth Faried was a great pickup. This guy ain't played in 2 years, so he's playing with a chip on his shoulder. He's playing motivational basketball. He gives them a lot of energy and effort, which they're going to need if you play a Golden State team. And then they are the one team that can give Golden State problems. They're going to make Steph Curry and DeMarcus Cousins guard. The Houston Rockets are probably one of the few teams in the league that can force them to guard. So that's going to be Chris Paul being aggressive on the offensive end. He got a role, Clint Capella doing what he did last year, finishing around the basket, even Kenneth Faried. So I like what they got. And I also like the pickup of Austin Rivers. I think he's a solid guy that can also get them good production come playoff time.
Austin Rivers was awesome yesterday. The Harden's going to get the headlines, understandably, 58 points, 8 rebounds, 10 assists. But Austin Rivers, I think, was 7 of 8 from the field. They did it without Eric Gordon. But I'm curious for all the folks out there, either fans or media, that have been trying to discredit what James Harden's been doing over the last 5 years and even this year. What's the excuse going to be this morning? Wasn't efficient enough? Well, he was 50% from the field, he was over 40% from 3, and he was 100% from the free throw line. Did it in garbage time? No, they needed every last point of it in a big comeback down 21 at one point. They're like, what are we going to use to discredit this one? Here, can we show America the gap between Harden's year and that's not another player, that's the whole league. He's averaging 36.6 a night. The next best is 28.6. His longest 30-point streak was 32 games. The next best is 5. Wow. He's got 6 50-point games. The rest of the league combined has 8, and nobody has more than 1. What he is doing, we've never seen, and I will say it again, if other guys could do it, they would do it. His team is top 5 in the NBA in wins since this incredible, I know it's no longer a streak, but this 35-game run began. He is going to finish first or second in the MVP. He is willing his team to it, and nobody can slow him down. Nobody can stop him.
And we kept saying when he was 5 games, 10 games into the 30-point streak, well, how long can he, how sustainable is this really?
Yes.
Well, clearly this is sustainable. Whether he's got Chris Paul there or not, he still continues to do it, but now, they've got a healthy team around him.
Yeah, we are later in the season, and typically, Nick could tell you, if I get more information, we can change our opinion. We didn't think that he had the overall stamina. And the reason why I think it can be effective, you make a great point as far as what Houston can do. Because most basketball teams, they're not going to be patient enough to believe in what the game plan is. But with the analytics and how Del Morey and how Houston and their coach run their offense, they can orchestrate and they can dictate to Golden State with Cousins when he's on the court and Steph Curry, which Steph Curry, this has been the plan. But typically, because NBA teams have tried to do that to them before, you just couldn't keep up with them scoring the ball. Houston has that mean combination of they have the offensive game plan and the reason why I like Harden doing it compared to a center, say if this was Joel Embiid, in the playoffs, I believe they're going to foul him more. What Harden is doing, I believe he can do in the playoffs in the style for which they've played. Head-to-head matchups, no one wants to give Houston credit for how good they've been against the Golden State Warriors the last year and a half.
8-5 in the last 2 years against Golden State.
And to add to your MVP, what we got to think about is usually the MVP voting goes to a team that wins 60, 65 games. That player plays great, which is probably what Giannis is going to do. But when you have a season like James Harden is having, we might not never see this again. It's hard not to pick him as MVP, kind of like Westbrook's MVP season. We hadn't seen a guy average a triple-double in a long time since Oscar Robertson. So that's why I think James Harden is going to win MVP. I had Giannis over him. I was giving him no credit, but what he's doing is unbelievable. Last night, when he does it with the efficiency that he does it with, it makes it look even more special.
Listen, we got a quarter of the season left, and this MVP, I think, is going to come down to the last week of the year. It is jostled back and forth between Harden and Giannis. Paul George made a brief appearance, but it's really between Harden and Giannis the last 6 weeks.
Yes.
I had Giannis as the leader yesterday morning. Harden might be the leader this morning. Like, I think it's going to go back and forth like that. Chris, you asked Antoine during the break something that I want to ask him now. How is he doing it? Like, what are you seeing from James Harden to what has he unlocked that nobody else honestly, in NBA history has been able to unlock?
I think when they changed the rules to no hand checking, he's the best offensive player we've had because he's taken the rules and put it to his advantage. When you think about how he gets to the free throw line, his ability to make three-point shots, he's not a bad three-point shooter. I mean, he has nights where he's horrible from the line, but he made 8 threes last night. So that makes it hard, and he's left-handed. So that plays a big part. People don't understand that. Everybody talks about his step back. It's a walk. He's just left-handed, so it's awkward because we don't see it a lot from a left-handed player. But he is the best offensive player under the new rules. When they took the hand checking away, and I've never seen a guy do this the way he does it on a consistent basis. And for some odd reason, these teams don't want to double team him. You know, for whatever reason that is, I think 32 games straight with 30 points would make you double team him. But they don't want to double team. He's going to continue at this pace.
Yeah, you have to be so proud of how he's grown his game. His ability to be able to dribble the ball with both hands because he was just a jump shooter before. He's not the most athletic, but the durability to finish at the hoop, left and right-handed, those are the things. He has grown his game into the player that we've seen.
All right, Antoine, we'll see you a little bit later. Coming up, did Kyler Murray measure up to a #1 pick? That's next on First Things First. FS1 is your destination for the day's best sports shows. Tune in for the big personalities on the big stories. We get you started right here on First Things First, Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern, only on FS1. Back here, First Things First, we're joined by former Pro Bowl linebacker Bart Scott.
Good
what
to see
up,
you, man? It's been too long.
Happy Friday to you. I never pound you up. Let me show you some Liz up, man. Blow that up a little bit.
Kyler Murray measured in at just over 5'10". At the combine, he weighed in at 207 pounds, slightly exceeding expectations. Yeah. The quarterback also recorded 9.5-inch hands, bigger than Baker Mayfield, mind you. According to reports, he will not throw and not run this weekend, but he will go through team interviews. All right, Bart, how much do Kyler's measurables help his draft stock?
I think it skyrockets. I think it puts him right in the conversation for the #1 quarterback on the board. You know, not named Dwayne. Well, Dwayne Haskins will be right there, too, but he has a different element that Dwayne Haskins doesn't have. And the fact that he rushed for almost 1,000 yards in college gives you that RPO type of element. We know that Haskins, your boy, is a pocket quarterback, a guy that's going to be the deer in headlights. He's going to struggle to buy time and do those off-schedule plays. You know, and you talk about his hands, 9.5, that's still Junior Whopper size to me. But listen, he's always been able to be that size. He's, you know, people question his height. You know, now that he's measurable to Russell Wilson and the fact that he's thicker than Russell Wilson or 207 pounds, maybe a little heavier than Russell Wilson. We'll see how that translates, but that shouldn't slow him down and stop his speed. And he's been, you know, you go back to what he's been able to do in the pocket. You know, the fact that he's only 5'10", he still doesn't get balls batted. It's about release point. It's about throwing through windows. It's about being able to move. And he's been that height his entire life. So when people say, well, he's going to, you know, get the ball batted down, he's too small. Yeah, you know, he'll be able to buy time, and he's learned how to play with that height.
So here's the deal. This is, to me, a case study in expectations coloring reality. Because we thought he might be under 5'10", 5'10" seems tall. He would be, when he's drafted, he will be the shortest quarterback ever drafted under the current draft format. That's the reality of it. Now, we can say he's not that much smaller than Russell Wilson, fine. But he's smaller than Russell Wilson. And I think the Russell Wilson standard is a tough one for anybody because Russell Wilson clearly has elite of the elite leadership, intangibles, and durability. all of those things that I don't know about. I'm not saying Kyler won't, but I can't just assign that to him just because they're of similar size and stature.
We couldn't even assign that to Baker.
Sure.
Baker Mayfield last year, and we thought he was a phenomenal leader. Leading in college at a high level and leading an NFL locker room, man, those are stratospheres apart from each other.
And listen, I get the similarities of they both went to a couple schools. They both could have played baseball. They're both under 5'11".
Yes.
Now that Kyler bulked up, they're almost the exact same weight at the combine. I understand that. But I also, just from watching them play, Kyler Murray, to me, played a much more wide open, passing-wise style of football than Russell Wilson did at NC State or Wisconsin. You can argue Kyler was a better college passer than Russell Wilson was. I think he probably was. Mm-hmm. I also think Russell Wilson is the outlier. And this is my only concern with Kyler, is he will be the shortest to have ever done it. So,
we saw Doug Flutie. I mean, he wasn't drafted.
Flutie wasn't good.
But he performed at a very high level, and he should have beat out Rob Johnson. But, when you look back, let's just compare him to what, Baker Mayfield was, because we've seen it translate. We've seen his offense. I know the Big 12 gets a lot of criticism because his defense optional sometimes. But he's excelled at every level that he's played at. So all I can do is judge on, okay, do I trust who's coaching him? I do, because we've seen it translate just last year. Mm-hmm. Has he been able to be a leader? Has he been able to excel at every level? He has. Now, I know we don't have a huge body of work, but I think it's worth, the investment. Some teams going to move up, and we don't know. It's either high risk, high reward, but we've seen this offense from this coach, come into the league and be successful in just 1 year.
Yeah, I do believe he can be successful in the NFL. Nick makes a good point. Anytime you're talking about the first to be able to do it, there should be some type of caution. I believe there's a couple quarterbacks he should be compared to, one being Drew Brees, the other one being Russell Wilson. Both of these guys are phenomenal. Where I don't think he is going to be able to match, and the reason why I can say that is because these guys are phenomenal in this area. Drew Brees has always been a phenomenal leader. In high school, playing football in the state of Texas, at the University of Purdue in the Big Ten, when he went to the Chargers, then when he went to the Saints, always a phenomenal leader. Russell Wilson, we know what he did at NC State. We know he could play baseball, too. When he went to the University of Wisconsin, within 1 week, they made him the team captain. They asked him to introduce himself in the first team meeting. He got up, and the players said, and you can read the articles about it, the players said they had never heard a player speak to them like a coach, like a father, like a leader, what he was going to prove to them. He did not want them to believe any of the other stories that they had heard about him. He wanted to be judged on what he did for the University of Wisconsin. Immediately, they named him team captain. In my limited experience with Kyler Murray, he is not Baker Mayfield. What is he going to be when he gets to an NFL locker room? Will he have a situation like Baker Mayfield? People say, well, that wasn't a good situation. Yes, it was, because he didn't have the pressure to start immediately. Came in early in the season, ended up having a spectacular rookie year. So I will compare him to a couple other quarterbacks. But that leadership piece, they have been excellent at, and they have done it for a long, long time. Those are not the things we've heard about Kyler thus far.
Let me ask you about Kyler's decision not to throw or run at the Combine this weekend. Where do you fall on that?
Well, I think it's spot on with people that's perceived to be in the top 10, which he should be. He's one or two quarterback in the league. You want to make sure that you're in a comfortable environment where you can make sure that you're with receivers that you're comfortable with, and you want to make sure that you're able to perform at your height. The fact that I think if he would have came in shorter, he would have been under pressure to perform, to continue to push the narrative. But the fact that he measures up means that he gets to do it on his terms. And he needs to do it when he's comfortable. So I'm fine. If he wants to wait to run, we know he's going to be explosive. We know he's going to be fast for a quarterback. It's all about his accuracy, his timing. And you talk about, this false narrative that goes around when you look at he's rushed for 1,000 yards. The false narrative is the fact that he's a running quarterback. Well, 90% of his passes came from within the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
You keep saying he measured up, and this is my only criticism and argument, but I'm going to keep going back to it. In the last 15 years, there's been one quarterback under 6 feet drafted in the first round. It's Johnny Manziel, who's 5'11 3/4 of an inch. There's only been 2 quarterbacks in the last 15 years.
Just got cut by the CFL. Couldn't sign with any team.
Right.
Banned from the CFL.
That's 6 feet. How about we go under 6'2"? There's only been 2 quarterbacks drafted in the first round under 6'2" in the last 15 years. Johnny and Baker, both drafted by the same Cleveland Browns, obviously with looks like very different career trajectories. Patrick Mahomes is considered a short starting quarterback. He is 4 inches taller than Kyler Murray. Like, it's almost a philosophical discussion, but we all agree that if he's 5'2", he couldn't do it. So we all agree there's a minimum height threshold. What is it? For all of NFL history, it's been right around 5'11". Can we drop it down an inch? That's the question he's going to have to answer. You think I'm nuts on this?
I think you are, because it doesn't matter. Mike Singletary told me really early in my career, greatness comes in all shapes and sizes. And I can see if we've never seen him perform at a high level. He won the Heisman. He threw for almost 4,000 yards last year. He was over 70%, almost 70% completion rate. So I'm not concerned with an inch or two. I'm concerned with, can he deliver, can he perform physically, and I've seen him do it at a high level.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.